So I'm going to tell you a story about my past a little bit. I'm just going to brag on myself a little bit. Is that okay? I mean, what I'm going to tell you is going to sound like, I was a spoiled brat as a kid. And the only reason that is true, the only reason that's going to sound that way is because I was. So we went on 2 huge vacations to Hawaii, one as a junior high kid and one as a high school kid. And that first trip was absolutely amazing. I mean, it was everything you would think about Hawaii. We crammed it into that week. We went to the island. We were only on the island of Maui, which is gorgeous. And we were on a beach that had this big resort, big 5-star resort, but we weren't in the hotel. We were in like a cabin, like right on the beach, like a bungalow. It was crazy. And we got to do things that I've never been able to do before. Learned to windsurf when I was there. We learned to scuba dive while I was there. I learned that I really, really like blackened mahi-mahi. It's kind of Cajun style of mahi-mahi, and it's delicious. Had it for dinner every single night. And after dinner, had this ice cream pie. I mean, it must have been like that high. You know how memories kind of exaggerate things, but I mean, it was just huge ice cream pie. But that was not even the best part, because after dinner, after mahi-mahi and the big ice cream pie, or cake, I guess it's cake, ice cream cake, then I would go to this little parlor. They had an ice cream parlor on the resort, and you go in and you choose whatever flavor you wanted, and you just charge it to Dad's room number. It's the best. And then I would take this, and I'm a middle schooler. I would take this and I would walk through all the palm trees and all the lights, Malibu lights, and go out to the beach. And I'm eating ice cream as it's melting in the warmth. It's always warm in Hawaii, and it's just melting down my fingers. It was glorious. It was paradise. This is paradise. Now, when Dad said to me, and the rest of us, we had a little family meeting, when I was in high school, we are going back to Hawaii. I'm like, are you kidding me? Windsurfing, scuba diving, mahi-mahi, ice cream and more ice cream. This is going to be amazing. I just could not wait to go back. And we went back, and this time it was a different island. We went to Oahu, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. And now the place on Oahu was pretty cool, because we were in a Hilton Tower way high up, and it was overlooking Waikiki Beach, and you could see Diamond Head, the volcano, in the horizon off to the side and up the coast, and it was gorgeous. It just wasn't the same. And the reason it wasn't, well, first of all, the reason it wasn't the same is because this 5-star hotel didn't have an ice cream parlor. And I looked. But there's another reason. Before I share that other reason why it wasn't the same, I want to ask you if you have ever experienced that kind of worship service where it's just so thick, so glorious, where it's almost like you're stepping into the throne room of God kind of worship experience. And it doesn't always last all that long, but you're just like goosebumps all over you. Julie, you know goosebumps, right? Goosebumps, praise bumps, all over you in that moment. It's like the beaches of Maui and mahi-mahi and windsurfing, scuba diving, and lots of ice cream all together. Wow. That kind of experience. And if you have had that, if you've been blessed to have that, you cannot wait to go back, right? Right? And yet, have you ever gone back and found that it wasn't the same? Now, maybe you haven't actually had that experience, because a lot of us, we haven't. We would long for that. We would like that. Maybe we got close to that. But what we all know, every one of us knows what it's like to go through the motions on a Sunday morning, to hear worship and to sing a little and to hear a message and to leave without anything, except maybe a sore bottom. We all know that, right? And if this has been your experience, that kind of worship that just, nothing. I know people talk about it, and maybe you've even been in a service where somebody next to you is like, oh, isn't that just amazing? You're like, no, it was okay. I wish it was amazing. then if you know that feeling, then you know maybe a little bit about what it was like to go on a vacation that you thought was going to be like the first time and it wasn't. What do both of those have in common? In order to answer that, what those both have in common, I want us to go back to the beginning. Now, when I say beginning, I don't mean the beginning of vacation, not the beginning of worship service. I mean the beginning. I want us to go back to the very beginning when God created everything. He created light and stars and moons and sun, and you created land and seas and skies and put birds in the sky and fish in the sea and animals on the land. Right before He created man, though, look what it says. Right here. Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east in Eden. God, before He puts man into His creation, He creates paradise. He creates a vacation spot unlike anything we have ever seen or imagined. If God made a garden, it's going to be more cool than the beaches of Maui, right? And then God places there the man He had formed, so He puts him on permanent vacation. Come on. This is good stuff. And we need to have the creativity of our minds to imagine what it was like, because oftentimes what we see is just kind of like a tree grove. Oh no. We're talking paradise. We're talking palm trees as well as fruit trees. We're talking every kind of tree imaginable, completely immaculate and decorated. What beautiful! God has created paradise, place me on a vacation. It gets better than that because the Lord made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye because it was gorgeous and good for food, better than ice cream every night. I know that's hard to imagine. Just try to. Use that creativity to see paradise. Oh, it gets better. Oh, it gets better. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now that second tree we often focus on because we know what it represents. But think about that first tree. Now the second tree was off limits. Don't even eat from it. You can eat from anything. And I believe this garden was massive and there was hundreds of trees and varieties, and God is a creative God, and they could have anything and everything they wanted, and they charged it to their daddy's account. One tree off limits, and that was an easy choice for them. We're not going to take from it. Or at least, not right away. But there's another tree, and we overlook this tree. There's two trees in the middle of the garden. This is the tree of life. Now, come on. This is the tree that if you eat from it, and they were welcome to eat from it, in fact, encouraged to eat from it, please pick from the tree of life, because the tree of life keeps you young. The tree of life sustains you. The tree of life gives you health. The tree of life is like the spa of the resort, only you don't have to go through treatments. You just go and eat, and we all like to eat. It is paradise. But it gets even better. Because not only is this, and remember, you got to use your imagination. This is the most amazing paradise you can ever imagine seeing. If you've ever been to a gorgeous place and overlooked and seen the valley and you've seen the trees and you've seen the ocean or you've seen the waterfall, whatever you're imagining, it is everything and better. It's paradise. But it gets better. Because God, who formed man out of the dust of the earth and breathed life into him, created him, knit together his entire being in delicate care, also came back to visit his creation, not just once in a while, but every day to fellowship with man and this woman. In fact, we know that if we jump ahead, because it says, then the man and the woman heard the sound of the Lord as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, the evening time. They're enjoying God. They're enjoying God. Not only that, but God gave them this moment to enjoy Him, but also gave them some tasks to do that were completely pleasing and good. Work was enjoyable because they got to plant and things would actually come up and there were no weeds, and it was paradise. It was amazing. They had purpose, they had meaning, they were working with God and learning from Him and growing together with Him, and God would come and visit Him. So not only were they always thinking about God was always on their mind, but they got to pray with Him in person. It was like they were walking on the beaches of Maui with Jesus every night. And both of us, Jesus and us, were eating ice cream, and it's melting gloriously over our hands. This kind of worship. So not only is this a scene of paradise, but it is the greatest worship experience You can imagine. Now, we all know that didn't last, because if it did, we would not be experiencing the kind of lives we're experiencing right now. Right? I mean, you don't even have to read anymore, because it clearly tells us what happened. Some of you already know what happened. We already talked about that other tree. But all you have to do is kind of look around and say, something's not right, something's missing. This cannot be still paradise, and we know. And even if you have it really good, and even if you have a nice house, and a nice car, and a nice freezer stocked with ice cream that you could get anytime you want, all you have to do is take your family on a vacation a time or two, and you will discover that not all vacations are paradise. Am I right? All you have to do is show up for worship consistently, and you will discover that not all worship experiences are an experience. Am I right? Something went wrong. And that something that went wrong, we go back to the trees, obviously. Remember that first tree, the tree of life, is like a spa. In the middle of this beautiful paradise, you have the tree like the fountain of youth is not a real thing, but the fountain or the tree of youth is. It was. They could take from it. But you also have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's a really mouthful right there. That's a big title for a tree. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The only tree that was off limits. I imagine there were so many trees they could have picked from, and they were all delicious, and yet, but they chose this. Okay, imagine it this way. Here's how it could have went down. Okay, I would go on the beach of Maui. It's first vacation. I would go into the ice cream parlor every evening. This was like paradise for a middle schooler. Every evening. Now it wasn't Baskin Robbins, so they didn't have like 31 flavors, but they had enough, right? I don't need 31 flavors because some of those flavors are, yuck, but they had the best flavors. And I don't know what I actually had each night. I cannot remember, but I know what I liked back then. So it was either pralines and cream, mint chip, or Rocky Road. Now, if you think that those aren't the best ice creams, you're entitled to your opinion. Everybody gets a chance to be wrong. These are the flavors I love. So I probably had one of those three. And who knows? I charged it to Dad. I probably had three altogether, right? Can you imagine that melting over your hand? Oh, glorious. So imagine if I went into the ice cream parlor and I noticed a flavor that I hadn't really noticed that was there before. I looked down and there's a flavor that is titled Yellow-Bellied Sea Snake Venom. And I asked the cute little girl behind the counter, what is yellow-bellied sea snake venom? That's crazy. She says, that's a favorite of the natives. The islanders love it, but they've kind of built up a tolerance for it. I would not recommend it because people who eat it typically get sick. If you're a mainlander, you'll probably get sick. Some have died. Do you think I'm going to take the yellow-bellied sea snake venom flavor? No, Rocky Road's just fine, and could you wash that really good before you stick that scoop in there, just in case it touched the venom? That's what I'd do, and yet, if you think about it, what did the first man and woman do? They took the poison. Why? Well, first of all, they didn't have this cute little girl behind the counter that was given some good, solid advice. Here's what they had behind the counter. Now, the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord had made. Evidently, he also could talk. Crazy. You will not certainly die. And he does his best sales job on them. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. That phrase, be like God, must have really rung something inside of Eve's head. Like, be like God? Because look what happens next. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye and also desirable for gaining... Now, let's back up for just a second here because I don't want us to miss this. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, stop right there. Think about this. Every tree in the garden had these two qualities. pleasing to the eye. This was paradise. It was tasty and good. That's not what distinguishes this particular temptation. What she sees is that line that it's desirable for gaining wisdom. And for whatever reason, that right there is enough for her. She took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. What in the world was she after? This wisdom. Wait, why? What does that even mean? It has to go back to what the serpent tempted her with. You will be like God. You'll know the difference between good and evil. You're going to have knowledge that you have not, insight that you have not, truth that you have not had before. And for whatever reason, that wisdom was attractive to her. Because up to that point, God had been walking with them and teaching them and leading them and helping them in life. And all of a sudden, they saw something. They saw something in this choice that would give them what they don't have. Now, wisdom itself, isn't that a good thing? Shouldn't we all be wise? Absolutely. So there's something else there. To understand what else is there, we have to go back to how we were originally created. So we back up a little bit. And here's what is said. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. Remember, they're wanting to be like God. This wisdom has something to do with being like God. And yet, when we go back to how we are created, it says, let us make mankind in our image and our likeness. And we could spend all kinds of time here working through this passage, because what in the world does it mean to be like God? But for our purposes, let's just stop and realize what God has done is made us in His image, which is exactly what Satan was saying you can have. You can be like God. They're already like God. There's something more in what he was implying, and something more that she was desiring than to be like God, because God made us like Him so that we could fulfill a purpose. And it's in the fulfilling of the purpose that distinguishes the wisdom that she's seeking versus the wisdom that's already been given to her, because she has the mind of God. And so does Adam. Because she has a relationship with God. She has His wisdom. But that's not what she wanted. She wasn't wanting the wisdom of God. She was wanting that wisdom for herself. That she could be the one that is wise like God is wise. She's saying, I don't need God if I have His wisdom. Now, I don't know if she really analytically went through that process, but that was the urge of the desire within her. And how do we know that? Because this right here, we are made like God, is only the first part of what this passage says. The passage goes on and tells us why we're made like God. Not only are we made like God, but we're made like God for a purpose. And so here's the rest of it. So that's the purpose. We are made like God so that they, this is man and woman, may rule over the fish in the sea, and over the birds in the sky, and over the livestock, and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. We are made like God so that we can partner with God. He made us with the qualities that He has that are transferable. Not, of course, the qualities that are not transferable. He always existed. We haven't always existed. There are things about God that we cannot be, but the things that we can be, He has made us in that image so that we can do the work of God while we're here on earth, partnering with Him. And when they were seeking knowledge from this choice, or wisdom from this choice, what they were seeking is to make good choices and decisions and be able to decide what is best for them apart from God. What they're saying is we don't need the partnership with God because we can be not just like God for the purpose of serving with Him. We can be like God, coming up with our own answers to what truth is. And that's dangerous. Because there is only one truth. And it always comes from God. And any time we start to think we know better than God, we start to play out the Garden of Eden all over again. And we take the forbidden fruit. Adam and Eve desired wisdom apart from God. Their own wisdom. Their own ability to choose what's right and wrong. Instead of partnering, they severed that relationship, that partnership relationship. They cut it off from them. And that's why what I'm going to read next is it's the saddest line, I think, in the entire Bible, because they experience, for the first time in their existence, what it is like to do life without God. Here's what it says. Then their eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. For the first time, being severed from that relationship where God is giving them their esteem, where God is giving them their wisdom, where God is giving them their joy, where God is giving them His mind. They don't feel it, and now they're uncomfortable in their own skin. And they run, and they hide. They're not whole anymore. They're still in paradise, but paradise is lost. And there's a reason for that. And it goes back to what I said about my vacation in Hawaii. And it goes back to that kind of worship experience where we feel nothing. Before I go there, though, I want to share this. I read a book recently by Skye Jethani, which is like the coolest name ever. Why couldn't my parents have named me Skye? Skye. Hi, I'm Skye. How you doing? I don't care what I look like. If you got a name like Skye, you're cool. So Skye Jethani writes this book just simply titled With. With. And the idea is, God desires so badly to do life with us and wants us to get it that we are supposed to do life with Him, that anytime we do anything other than life with Him, we're experiencing some great fear and some great discomfort and some great anxiety because we're not as we were created to be. We're like Adam and Eve, naked, uncomfortable in our own skin because we are made to do life with God. He spends a great deal of time talking about 4 different approaches we all tend to gravitate towards as far as how we're going to live this life and how we relate to God. And all 4 of them pull us away from with. This morning, I've only talked about one of those 4. And it's simply this. We tend to gravitate towards doing life over God. That's saying, God, I know better than you. And for a lot of us who love Jesus and want to do life with Him and worship Him and all that, we don't really consciously say, I know better than you, God, but in subtle ways we do it all the time, don't we? We place ourselves over God. And now, obviously, this particular approach has a lot to do with how atheists and non-believers and casual believers treat God. Like they're gonna maybe at best live His principles, but really not live with Him. And you see this all the time, and we could spend a great deal of time talking about how oftentimes we can just live out the principles of God and really have a meaningless relationship with Him. So it could be atheists, it could be those that just live the principles of God. Like there's moral laws in the universe, and there's tithing laws, and God's put these laws in. He's kind of made this great big watch. He's wound it up, and He's let it go. And it's our job to figure out what the principles and the laws of nature and the laws that are spiritual are, and live according to those, and we'll live our best life if we do that. And it's all feel-good stuff. The problem is it's not with God. But here's the deal. Most of us, that's not how we believe. For most of us, we want a relationship with God. What we are doing when we place ourselves over God is the same thing Adam and Eve did. I think I screamed a lot last night, so it wasn't just booze, by the way. Angie put a stop to that. We do this all the time, like Adam and Eve did. Adam and Eve had a relationship with God. They walked with Him in the cool of Eden. They had like the best worship experience imaginable. They believed. But they just thought in this moment that they could have wisdom apart from God, and that would be so cool to be able to make my own choices to what right and wrong is instead of relying on the mind of God to lead me through life. And He's like, no, You missed it, and we miss it all the time. What happened with my second vacation to Oahu, Waikiki Beach. It was beautiful. There was nothing wrong with the location. It was great. Waikiki is like the biggest touristy area imaginable. That was great for teenagers. We had a blast, but we didn't have a blast at the same time. And here's why. It had nothing to do with where we were at. It had nothing to do with not having ice cream, although that was a downer. My younger sister and I got in a fight that lasted a lot of the vacation. Turns out it's more important who you're with and the unity that you have than it is where you're at. Am I right? I'm not going to go into details of that fight and all the ways she was wrong. It's not going to go there. But it was sad when you think about it. This should have been an awesome vacation. And instead, we let that fight make it an okay vacation. And I'm never going to be able to go on like a 5-star resort vacation. I'm not taking the family to Hawaii. But we've had some really cool vacations where the location didn't really matter. Now, we've been to some really cool places. I grew up in Southern California, and I'm kind of addicted to Disneyland because I used to go there every year as a child. So we save up and we go there, but when we go there, we stay in a Howard Johnson's. Now, that's not 5-star. I don't know if you know that or not, but Howard Johnson's is not 5-star. Where you go is not as important as who you go with and how unified you are, and that whole concept of being with them on vacation is huge no matter where you go. And the same thing's true with worship. Who you do worship with matters, right? And it's not just like us, but us with Jesus matters. When we bring Jesus in here together, it's just absolutely amazing. The problem is, a lot of times we don't. And the reason that we don't is because we so often are trying to live over God. And in small, subtle ways, He wants to partner with us. And we're like, yeah, that's a great idea, but partnership requires surrender. You remember, this is not an equal partnership. Jesus led 12 individuals. Do you think it was like equal partnership with Jesus as He's teaching them to be like Him and do ministry and send them out? No, we would have called them the 13. No, it's Jesus and the 12. He leads us. It's not an equal partnership, but it is a really cool partnership because He gifts us and He gives us power and He puts His presence in us and He walks through and He gives us the words to say. And it's just amazing when we're doing life with Him. The problem is we don't always want to do life with Him. We think we know better. How many times do you take the wheel away from God? Come on. Don't we do that? All the time. And it's in such subtle ways in our prayer life. We pray and we give lip service to the idea of God, your will be done. That's just like a really good thing to say in a prayer, but do we mean it? Because sometimes, what if His will is for you to suffer through this? And you're like, no, God, give me comfort. I want your will as long as it's comfortable. There's boundaries, God, within which I'm willing to do this walk with you. If you take me outside that boundary, I don't want to go there. I will do everything up to there. Don't we do this? We bargain with God. We make deals with God. We tell God how we want it to play out, and we're not willing to have Him lead us. He might say no to us, and we pretend like we're not listening. He might say, I want you to take this step of faith. And we say, no, I want to walk the trodden path. It's comfortable. I know that path. I'm going to go the way I know instead of the way that is risky and takes courage. He tells us, and we say no. He tells us no, and we say yes. We play God. Again, it's not like that's how you think through it. I'm going to be God today, but we often do in our subtle ways, don't we? Can you imagine what it would be like as a church if we actually came in here with God? Not coming here to seek God. Now, maybe you came this morning to seek God, and that is so awesome, and I hope I hope that you will talk to somebody, or you'll come forward, or you make a decision, and we can help you to have a relationship with Jesus, because there's nothing like doing life with God. And everybody who has experienced doing life with God knows that, even though we're constantly, as Justin said, pulled away by our desires, we know it's the right way to do life. We just keep chasing after that forbidden fruit, don't we? What if we came in already with God? What if we already were spending the week talking to Him? And maybe for us it's morning time that we have that quiet devotional time, and not the evening, but maybe in the evening we talk to Him again and confess our sins for that day, and we just have these routines in our life where we're meeting with God, and then He's on our mind constantly because we're reminding ourselves. We've got reminders to think about God throughout the day, and we're doing this thing intentionally with God. We want so badly to do this thing with God. What if we came in here with God, and so many of us came in here with God that we actually felt, when it says, when two or three gather in my name, do you realize what that is saying? When two or three gather in my name, I am there among them. Come on. It only takes two or three of us to bring God in here. What if we came in with God? And what that's going to require of you, honestly, is that you examine your life. And you ask the question, okay, God, what is it that I'm doing? What area of my life am I trying to live over you? What am I doing? It's subtle, I know, and it's in my prayer life probably, or it's in my actions or my thought life. Where is it, God? Reveal that to me, where I am trying to do this in my own strength, my own wisdom, apart from you leading me. Where have I cut you off? And when you discover that, you have to confess that. You have to tell God. And you have to say, I'm sorry for doing that. You have to repent. It means turn away from it and turn back to God. Another way to say that is you've got to spit out that rotten, forbidden fruit. Some of us need to spit out the fruit. We're going to go into a time of decision. And all that means is everybody in this room has a decision to make, and it may be on different levels. Maybe it's to surrender to Jesus, to get baptized this morning, to join the church. This is our time of decision. But everybody has a time of decision. Because Jesus Christ died on the cross and bled for you, your decision is a salvation decision, or it is a walk with Jesus decision. It's always a decision about Jesus. So you have to examine your life and say, all right, what is it that I am trying to run in my life on my own apart from God? And this morning, during the worship time, while we're singing in just a moment, I need to give that up to God. And if you need help with that, if you want prayer with that, you just come on up here. We'll surround you and we'll pray and we'll help you get spiritually strong for that decision, because there are some things that, giving up control is not easy. And I know. It's a daily battle. So I'm going to ask that you stand. In a moment, we are going to sing, and that's your time of decision, but I just want to pray for your decisions this morning. Father God, we're asking for you to help us do life with you. God, we get so distracted so often, and we think in our subtle ways that we can do this thing better than you, and that's foolishness, it's crazy, and we know it. But God, we keep finding ourselves grabbing that wheel. And we just want to confess that to you this morning. We want to give that up. God, there are some specific things that your Spirit is working on individuals in this room on, and I just pray for victory in Jesus this morning, that you will break through and that things will be given up and laid at Jesus' feet, and that we'll all return to a relationship with you. God, for decisions for salvation, baptism, and membership, I just pray that you bring those decisions and they are all to your glory. We love you and thank you. In Jesus' name.